Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Advisor. I'm Lisa Urbanski, host of the show, joined today by Brian Wetzel. So, Brian is a true Renaissance entrepreneur, from launching a production company that contributed to the 1996 Olympics, to founding award-winning startups like Scoobs, to owning a gym and a restaurant. Brian's career spans innovation, storytelling, and business savvy. He has earned 16 national and international awards in film and advertising. And most recently, he stepped into a role of author and released his new book called The Real Problems Destroying Education. So that's what we're going to touch on today. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some ideas and solutions to help the school system, long term and short term. If you did not, excuse me, tune into the last few episodes, we discussed problems that are destroying the school system, which Brian so brilliantly outlines in his book, The Real Problems Destroying Education. So he is back. Today, we're going to talk about solutions and ideas. But before we do, I just want to thank our sponsor, iHeartRadio and Spreaker. Without you, this would not be possible. And to our listeners, please like, subscribe, follow, send to a friend if you feel like this episode can impact them. And feel free to leave some comments as well. Brian would be happy to answer those too. Welcome back, Brian.
Well, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, I was just commenting before on your nice blue Easter shirt.
Yes, yes. Let's not tell everybody that I wore it yesterday. Well, I guess I just said it. But
Oh,
yes, it was my Easter shirt, and I thought I hadn't worn the blue shirt for any of these podcasts, so we'll throw on something new.
yeah, you're looking
A new
good.
color
Looks great.
anyway.
Looks great. It's very spring-like.
Yes, well, that was the point. That was the point.
It's beautiful. So, what's been going on in your world?
I just published another book that I'll probably come back on in maybe a month and talk about called A Path to Faith Through Science and Common Sense. And very proud of that book. It was sort of a book that required a lot of interviews and research, and it took it took a while to get it just right, and I was very proud of it, and how
Mhm.
it turned out. And it's not a preachy book at all. It's more
What's the
of
title
because
again,
I'm.
Brian?
It's called A Path to Faith Through Science and Common Sense. And
Mm.
as somebody who is a skeptic by nature, I wanted to write a book as a skeptic on why, you know, you you should have faith. That there is evidence out there, um, even if you don't. I don't go into the book. I tell people in the book what I believe, but I don't proselytize about whether it's, Jesus or Buddha or whatever. I'm not telling people who to worship. I just want them to understand and believe that the world around them has a lot more going on in it than maybe you we recognize in our daily life. And I have some real stories in there of things that happened after my mom died and things that have happened to me throughout my life, that I consider either miracles or really low probability chances that things that took place. And so I wanted I years ago after my mom passed, I started reading about things, and I got lucky too because in my travels and meeting people, I met some scientists who shocked me, because you always hear science doesn't believe in God or they're atheist, but I found that not to be true, and I ended up meeting some Harvard scientists and some scientists out of Oxford University who sat and talked to me about their beliefs and the things that they had seen through science, and I was astounded. And I thought, well, there's the information is out there, but I just wanted to collate it all into one place so that people don't have to read 40 books. They can read one that sort of gives a synopsis. And if you choose to go out and discover more, that's on you, but it would be a good idea, but you don't have to. I sort of lay it all out in the chapters. And like I said, I'm very proud of it.
Oh, that's amazing. So you have not been busy at all, is what you're telling us.
I'm always busy. It's a my daughter was just complaining about this to me. She was like, you know, asking me, I go to lunch. I said, well, I got this going on. I got this. I got a meeting. I have a phone call. And she says, you got to slow down. But I'm just not
Mm,
good at that. I'm not good at all. It's hard for me to sit down and just veg, but I need to do it more. And I have been forcing myself to do it more. It's, you know, you got to, I think when I was younger, you feel like you're bulletproof and you can just keep going 100 miles an hour. But as you get older, you start realizing that you need downtime
hmm.
to regenerate yourself. So, yes,
Exactly. And to have really, really good conversations about the school system and
yes.
ideas and solutions to help the school system. So why don't we get into that stuff?
Okay. So I thought that at the end of
Oh,
my
this,
book, I
I was
put
just gonna
in
say, yes. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
solutions because, you know, the book spends, I don't know, what is it, 9 chapters? Actually, it's 20 chapters. It's a long book.
Mm,
20 chapters on problems and complaints. And I didn't want to end it like that. I wanted to, after talking with teachers and former administrators and the things that I have seen just running businesses, to offer some ideas that would be quick and simple that would really make a big difference in the quality of our education right now. And so, if we go through them, one of the first things that I would be so beneficial, and a lot of teachers would be down with this, and that is cutting the curriculum back and getting rid of all the junk. We don't need this to teach social issues. We don't need social and emotional learning. We don't need to be teaching about things that really should be taught at home by the families and the kind of things that make a lot of teachers nervous. A lot of teachers don't want to be teaching moral and social issues. They deem that as something that is outside of, you know, if I'm a math teacher, I don't want to be teaching that. If I'm, you know, teaching reading and language arts, I want to teach reading and language arts. We don't need to make the lesson blossom out into an issue on trans or LBG, you know, LGBTQ. That's not to say that those aren't discussions that you should have with your children, but I think most people and most teachers would prefer that to take place at home with the parents. And so, and I also think that in trimming back the curriculum, we should add a lot of, there should be some things added in. I've literally heard this probably 200 times in the past year that uh, we're not teaching sometimes some of the things that would be beneficial to a child getting out of high school. Why aren't we teaching them how not to fall for phishing things online
mm.
or getting taken by somebody who texts you and says, "Hey, you have to put in your password for this," or my wife got a call recently from someone claiming to be the Bureau of Investigation, and if we didn't pay a fine, they were going to come and arrest her. Okay,
Wow.
now luckily I know a lot of people who are police officers, so I just quickly called them and asked them their thoughts, and they said just ignore it. It's a scheme.
Wow.
But a lot of kids fall for this.
Yeah.
One of my someone I know who comes to my gym, their child had a laptop and they were on a website, who knows where, and it popped up and said, "We found viruses. You need to hit this button and download to get rid of it." Well, then
Right.
suddenly their computer was taken over and they couldn't get it back.
Wow.
So they
Yeah.
had to take it to, I think, Best Buy and have it completely wiped out and reloaded again. Teach that stuff. Teach a new world kind of thing, social media. I just saw a story about how kids are starting to. This is sad, by the way,
Oh
because we have
no.
AI and you can map someone's face onto it. A lot of kids are getting targeted where someone's taking their face and putting it in a porn video and then distributing it around school.
Wow.
And the
That's
laws are
absolutely
very in the
terrible.
middle with that because that's never been something that was a problem.
Yeah.
But it needs to be addressed at the law at the legal side. But in the meantime, I think that we need to be talking about that in school, and kids need to be understand the ramifications of that stuff. Same thing with taking for for instance, I used to get this conversation with my daughter that if you send out photos to someone you think you love, I said, when you break up or even before then, those pictures are going to
Mhm.
be shared and spread out everywhere and we'll never get them back. That kind of stuff, they kids don't think that far in the future. But maybe
No.
if we had a class on that. When I was a kid, we had a class on balancing your checkbook. There's no
Wow.
class currently in any high school that I can find that does finances. I
True.
remember I'll tell you a sad story. I had the guy who in my restaurant, Jermaine, he was a great guy. Um, he died. He got hit by a drunk driver leaving our restaurant on New Year's night, January 1st, 2022. And it was devastating to everybody because he was loved. Everybody loved him. And he was a very energetic guy, but he had a son, and we would sit and talk about how he could save for his son's future. And he didn't know anything. Because they don't teach it in school anymore. And I remember talking to him about compound interest. And I said, so if you put let's say $50 a week in a savings for him, how much do you have at the end of the month? And he said, well, you have $200. I said, no, you don't, because you get interest, and then that interest earns interest, and and I was trying explaining this to him, and he was excited. He was blown away. He had not understood this before. That's
Right.
sad. Everyone should come out of school understanding how to handle their money.
Hmm.
Um, and how to save. Right now, credit card debt in the United States is currently at its highest levels since they've been keeping records. People are living off their
I
credit
believe
cards
it.
right now. Credit scores are at an all-time low. We we I just had a conversation with my daughter again about credit, like about, when you get a credit card and you use the whole card, now your credit score doesn't go up, it dives. And so these are things that I think would be so beneficial in school. And we could get rid of all the other fluff that's being taught and add those things in. It could be
Mhm.
like a home ec, in my opinion, learning to survive in the real world, save, avoid being catfished, avoid having somebody or sending out photos of yourself in a compromising position. It should be like a new home ec type of class, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Um, so that's one of the big things. And a lot of teachers are very on board with cutting the curriculum down and just getting the basics. We're trying to get them to college or to a trade. We don't we don't have to shape everything they think. Let's just get them there and make them successful with whatever they choose to do when they leave the school. And unfortunately, we're graduating too many children right now who don't even know how to read and write in some places, and that's that's really unforgivable in my opinion.
It's crazy.
Next
There's a
thing,
lot
and
of,
I talked to, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna, no, I was just gonna say that I heard a statistic that this generation is operating at a grade five level. Like they're
Yes.
out of school, but they're operating at a grade five level with that type of
Hmm.
understanding and mentality, which just absolutely blows my mind. Like our world is so different than what it used to. So I agree with you that we need to change something. We need to start setting up
Yeah.
our kids and our students for success because right now it's not
Yeah.
being done.
I'll tell you a funny thing that's going on right now that's I have to get corrected. So they stopped teaching keyboard class, like typing,
Okay.
because of computers, but we still have keyboards. And
Right.
so in some districts, the teachers are upset because their writing test for their state testing in elementary school has to be typed, but they're also timed. And you're giving it to a third grader who doesn't know how to type, but they're now rushing trying to type.
Wow.
We should be teaching them to type throughout the year so that when the day we get to the test, they're proficient at least enough to get through it without feeling like they're rushed.
Right.
And that just makes me laugh because that's just kind of how school government works, where they make changes without thinking about the unintended consequences. And that's one of those examples where the unintended consequence should have been obvious. If
Mm-hmm.
we're going to get a third grader to type their it's a two-page report or whatever it is, composition, and they only have a certain amount of time to do it, it would be very helpful if we could teach them how to type.
Totally.
Somebody should have spoken up or raised their hand in a meeting somewhere and said, you know how much better it would be if they could type?
Yeah,
Anyway,
that might have
one of the
helped a
other
little
things
bit.
that I brought up on an earlier show with Stacy was that a teacher's board of directors,
Mhm.
I think in every district would be a great thing. Now, some districts would push back and say, well, we do have one, but every single teacher I've spoken to has said, well, they don't give us any power. They just say, this is what we're doing, or they give us two choices to pick from for a curriculum or a decision that's being made that impacts the entire district. It should be restructured, in my opinion, to be very much like a corporation. The CEO of a major corporation cannot just do whatever he wants. If the board votes no, he has to, he or she has to follow that directive because the board has voted it down. Do you know how much different a school system would be run if the teachers could vote no to things or vote down choices that the district heads are looking to make, or say this is not the curriculum that we think we should be using. We think this is a better one. I think that, and it would also empower the teachers. You're losing teachers right now at an alarming rate. Every little thing you can do to get more morale, to bring um, some autonomy to them where they feel like they have a say would greatly benefit as far as retention and just their overall job satisfaction. Um, and I know when I've brought this up, I did a speech a couple years ago and it was mostly district people. And you would have thought that I was asking them to all give up their leadership position. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you to work with your teachers on these decisions that impact them. One of the things that districts forget when you make an edict for the teachers that they have to follow and it's not popular with the parents, the district rarely hears about it, but the teachers hear about it every day, every week. It's a problem. You're
Right.
putting it on them to have to deal with the unpopular decision.
Mhm.
If you gave it to the teachers, then the teachers could at least say, well, we voted this way because, and this is why we felt this was the best decision. But instead, they're having to defend someone else's decisions. And even if they don't necessarily agree with it, that puts them in a
Oh,
weird position. Um, Here's a big one. So there's a lot of arguing going on around the country about the type of books that are in some of the school libraries. And I'll be honest, they're alarming. Some of the books I've seen in the elementary school libraries in some of the more progressive areas, uh, teaching how to use sex toys. Um, I saw one that literally showed how
wait,
to
in the
do a
school?
selfie.
In the
Oh yeah,
school? In
I'll
the
send
school
you.
library.
I will send you I have the pictures in my book that we scanned out of
Wow.
these books. And
They
so
were
it's
in the
not
school
hard to
library. That's crazy.
in an elementary school. And so when I hear people saying, oh, these parents just want to ban books, I'm like, well, no, they just want to ban
Yeah.
inappropriate books. I don't even think that belongs in a high school. Let that be that we don't need that in a high school. Kids in high school are already they're already watching porn, so we don't need to feed them at the library. But having said that, it's in elementary schools. I've seen demonstrations of how to have sex, gay sex and heterosexual sex, um, in an elementary school book. And it's kind of mind blowing because I'm not a Quaker by any stretch. You would have trouble finding any of my friends, longtime friends, saying that he's too conservative. But that doesn't belong in a school library. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. But I hear people in some states defending it. So then why don't we have a parent book approval process at the district? Let them put a list up each year, let the parents vote. They vote it's not in the school library, it doesn't get in the school library. And it doesn't matter whether the district thinks it belongs there or not. Um, that's how you make the parents happy. When I see school boards kicking people out of meetings because they came to read a passage from a book that's in the actual library, and in one instance it was so ridiculous, they literally said you can't say those words in this meeting, and the mom said, but they're in the book that's in the school. So I can't say I'm here in a meeting with adults, but it can be in the school. So the common sense there is lacking. And I think that if you empowered the parents to say, I don't want that book in the school, and if enough parents vote it out, then it just has to not be in the library. This is another place where you're taking power away from the district, but you're giving that power to the parents. And if you don't want to have parents constantly at your school board meetings yelling at you, then you need to give them some say. I find that sometimes the districts or some of these school boards, I wonder if they have lost sight of their priority. Their priority is to serve their constituents, not to tell them what they should think or what they should accept. That's not how it's supposed to work. And I think but giving the parents a voice in voting for what books can be in the libraries and what can't would go a long way to helping some of that. Stop me whenever you have a question. Um,
No,
also,
I don't know if
go
I have a
ahead.
question. I just, that's insane to me that something like that was in an elementary school and people thought that was okay.
Yeah. I was pretty shocked too because I had been hearing about this and I thought, I bet it's probably not that bad. I was taken back. I've seen oral
Wow.
sex demonstrated in a cartoonish way in books that were found in elementary and middle school libraries.
Okay.
Um, that just blows me away, blows my mind.
Yeah.
And I literally got an email when I was writing the book. I asked a late someone, it was in California, why this is allowed. She said, well, the best way to teach people to have a healthy sex life is to start young. And I said, but they don't need it that young.
Mm-hmm.
Kids in elementary school, they're not thinking about sex until you bring it up. Trust me, I know lots of elementary school teachers. They will tell you that a third grader, a fifth grader is not talking about sex. That's not on their minds yet. They haven't hit puberty, first of all. They don't need to see it. But once you introduce it, now they are. And it comes down to, so there's a lot of data out there on introducing pornographic photos to young kids and how it kind of screws with the how they think about sex in a healthy or non-healthy way. And I don't know that any studies have been done. To me, introducing it as a cartoon doesn't necessarily make it any better.
Right.
So that's my take. And I think that sometimes common sense gets thrown out the door for being too, we want to be progressive. And I understand we want to progress, but we also have to understand that if we're not progressing in the right way, in a healthy
Mhm.
way, maybe that's not the right choice.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it's tough. I think it's tough because I mean, the world has changed so much, and kids literally have every single thing at their fingertips if they have a cell phone, right? If they're connected to the internet. So the only thing that I could see possible is that they want to bridge that gap and make it normalize it. But at the
right.
same time, a grade 3-year-old, grade 3 student, sorry, does not need access to that in their school library. So it's just a
Yeah.
little bit mind-boggling. But yeah, you're right.
Well,
We're trying
and
to be way
so,
too progressive, way too quickly. And there's better ways
right.
to do that. So,
One of the things that is alarming about that in a way, teachers will tell you at the elementary school level, if you have a kid who's drawing pictures of sex, talking about sex to another child, another elementary school child, that's usually an indication that something's going on at home.
right,
They're being introduced to this before they understand it.
right.
Could be abuse. And
Hmm.
so I actually had a teacher in Florida bring this up, and I thought, oh, that's brilliant. I never thought about that.
Hmm.
Um, she said, so if you're introducing it to everyone in the school, how do we know now
Right,
if it's coming from home or if it's coming from our own school library?
right.
And I thought that was a very valid point.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
it's a way to
and by the
protect our
way, if
kids.
it's not good at home at third grade, second grade, fifth grade, then how is it good at the school level?
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll move on because that one's a disturbing one. I want a Defense of Parents Act. I think that that would be a great law to pass, which essentially sets the rules for what the parents' authority is or the guardian's authority is for their kids in school. Right now in the United States, and this goes again to comes down to red states, blue states in most cases, but in some states and in California, I think the high court there vote, voted that the parents do not have the right to know whether the school is helping them transition to another sex. Now, I don't have any trouble with trans people. I actually used to know someone who was I was very good friends with for years. But I think even she would have told you that there's an appropriate age where that's good. And second thing is that as a parent, I, I can't let my kids smoke, but we can let them take drugs to adjust their hormones without my knowledge. That seems out of bounds. And I think most parents, if you can imagine being a parent and getting blindsided by the fact that your child for 4 months has been taking hormones without your knowledge, that's got to be a problem. It would be a
Mhm.
problem for me, enough that I would probably pull my child out of that school. I think that there needs to be an established act that sets forth what the parents' rights are so that it's not different from state to state, from county to county, from district to district, that just the minimal um, rights. What is the parent's right to know? And I think that they should have the right to know about what's going on. They have the right to know if their child's being bullied, if they're failing school, if they are, if they're doing something at school that is inappropriate. Everything comes back to the parents, but suddenly this, which is to me is a major change in their life, and the parents don't get a say in it in some states. And to me, that's wrong. Some states have even gone so far as to say that if you deny them the right to transition, or to use their pronouns, that the parents can actually be arrested or have their children taken away from them by the state. That seems nuts to me. Um, and we're not going to solve that here, but I just think that the parents should have the right to know. And I think that one of the problems is that from all across this country, it seems like the rules are different from all the states. I think it would be good to just lay out some basic rights. This is the parents and the guardians have, this is their place. This is what they have say. This is what they don't,
Mm,
instead of leaving it to be in all these gray areas that no one really knows where their rights end and where they begin.
right. Yeah, that would be good to have that all laid out so people knew they had a resource to turn to when a situation was happening.
Hmm.
Even that's a lot of pressure for teachers, for the counselors, because
Yeah.
they're dealing with so many different students. So if there was a tool, like you said, in an act that outlines every single thing, that would definitely help. It would take some of that pressure off.
Right. It would. And I've spoke to a lawyer once who told me it would help with them as well, because now if someone comes to them, they have to literally look up the state and figure out what the rules are there. And even within those states, this is such new law that it's not defined. And so they're going to end up trying to sue, or they're going to end up trying to force the parents' rights on the schools. And maybe in that state, they're not going to win. There's no way to know what the rules are.
Right.
And I think that it's time that those rules be set in stone so that everyone can follow them. And we can argue about what those are, but there needs to be something set in stone. That's my opinion. Um, and that's a big one when it comes to parents. A lot of parent, my wife, for the first time last year, had when they have the conference before school starts where you meet your teacher, and she was teaching second last year, she's teaching third this year. For the first time ever, teachers came in, or parents came in and whispered under their breath, "Now you're not going to be teaching this stuff, are you?" And they're concerned. So it's
Right.
on the parents' radar that this might be a problem, and they're growing weary that something's being done behind their back without their permission. And I wouldn't want that either. My kids are grown now, but that would bother me if something like that was being done behind my back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what are some of the
So,
short term, let's talk about short term solutions. What are some short term solutions that we could do to help the school system? Like
well,
what's going
the
to help
next
right
one
now?
is very much like that. I think that school choice has really blown up around the United States. I think it's now, is it 44 states, 45 states have some sort of school choice.
Mm,
That's a big deal. Giving parents the ability and the power to take their kid to another school, another public school, a charter, a private school, is a big deal. I have spoken to parents who said that my child, the district that they were going to, and most of these were in the inner city. These parents were very concerned. My child was being bullied. They weren't getting a good education. And in those states like New York, there's no way to take your child out of that school and put them in another school. You're told you must stay there. That's bonkers to me. Everybody wants their children to get a good education so they can get started in life and be successful. So imagine being told, well, yeah, the school is failing. They're failing your child when it comes to educating them, and they're not safe, but you're going to stay there. I'm not telling a parent that. And I think that every state should adopt school choice so that you can have the freedom to move them. I keep getting, this is an area where I get the most debate. And it's always from pro public school people. But keep in mind, my wife teaches public school. I'm not against public school. In fact, I want public schools to be better. I don't want everyone to have to choice. I tell everybody who wants to get into this argument, No parent wants to take their kid and drive them someplace farther away to go to school. Okay, it's inconvenient. I would only do that if I thought they were being failed by my local district school, the one that they could ride the bus to. Okay, so just do better. If the public school doesn't want to lose students, then do better. Do a better job, and no one will want to take their kids out of the school. Um, you're always going to have wealthy people who are going to go to a private upscale school because it's not just about the education, it's also about the cachet of going to that school.
Mhm.
But your upper middle class and below, they just want their kids to go to a good school where they get a good education and they get out and they can move on to something that supports them. And so I always tell people who you want to get into this argument, just do better and you won't have to have that fight. Okay. People don't want to choice their kids. I promise you. Um, it's inconvenient. I drove my children to a private school temporarily once when we were moving. I mean, I had to go through it. It was like driving to work twice because I had to go in a different direction through traffic, get them there, then go to my job, then go back to the school, pick them up, and then bring like it's not convenient.
Right.
And I would only do that if it was necessary. And I think every parent feels that way.
Hmm.
That's a quick one. Just start doing better, but give everyone the choice to take their children to the school that best is doing the better job for them.
Right. Right. Yeah, that would make a big difference, a very big difference.
Another thing you can do that will immediately make a difference with teachers, and I think it would bump up the quality of education, and I've talked about this till I'm blue in the face, and that is giving teachers the ability to just teach the way they know best. One of the things that Stanford study found, and I think it went on for 10 years. They found that charter schools and private schools, but mostly they focus on charter versus public because charter schools really are public schools. They get state funds. It's just that they have a charter and they don't necessarily have to follow the same curriculum. They follow the curriculum that is laid out in their charter. And they found that the education was better at the charter schools, even though they got less state funding. And they found the one reason they zeroed in on was that in charter schools, the teachers have the autonomy to teach the way they think is best.
Right.
A good teacher who's been teaching for a while knows how to teach.
Hmm.
We don't have to tell them they're teaching it this way or that way. Give them the curriculum, tell them what the goal is, what we want them to know at the end of the school year, and they will get it done. And they'll do it whichever way works best for the students they have in the class. One of the things that drives me crazy, uh, and a lot of teachers, is that a lot of districts they continually want to tell the teachers how to teach, but as if there's a lot of college academics who keep putting out ideas for how to teach all students, as if there's a one size fits all method. And that's just not, I don't believe that exists. I think
No,
that some
ever.
people are more visual. I
Hmm.
know kids who want to read more, some want to
Hmm.
work in groups, some want to work by themselves. Um, Whatever works for that student or the entire class, the teacher can lean into that and do a better job. Some of the students, the teachers that I have talked to who get praise for do having students do really well, will tell me under their breath I didn't do it the way they told me. I did it my way. But I can't
Wow.
tell my own boss that you're giving me praise and I didn't do it the way you told me. I did it the way I know best. And I think
Right.
that there's a Harvard study that followed that Stanford study up, and it had the same result. They found that giving the teachers autonomy to teach the way that it works best for that class was way more beneficial than just having it forced on them. And I think that
Absolutely.
that is so easy to change. You could change that tomorrow. Um, and if you have two major studies telling you that that has increased the scores and the education level, why aren't we doing that?
Wow, let
They can
everybody
see the
shine.
same stuff that I researched. It's not as if I found something that none of these school districts can look up.
Right.
Um, so that's another one. Here's another one that can be done right away. Most people don't realize this. Um, Teachers need resources. We'll spend 450 bucks a year buying stuff for the class that we don't get reimbursed for. And it's fine, I guess, but it's part of the job. But in a corporate environment, you would turn in your receipts, you'd get reimbursed.
Mhm.
Second thing, one of the reasons that spend so much money is that, so let me go back. Probably when you were in school and when I was in school, we had textbooks, and then the teacher had the teacher version. And
Right.
in the teacher version, there were tear out sheets for quizzes that matched the textbook.
Yeah.
And so everything was in alignment with the textbook. There's no textbooks anymore. And they're not giving them quizzes and they're not giving them stuff. They're not giving them worksheets. They have to come up with their own or make their own. So now you have
Right.
everybody doing their own thing.
Mm.
And a lot of times, like the second grade hall in a school, they'll all get together and share. But they're literally buying, there's a website called Teachers Pay Teachers. You have to be a teacher to get on it. You have to show your credentials. That just sold for millions of dollars. They make millions of dollars. And what it is teachers creating quizzes and graphical things for the class or whatnot. They upload them to Teachers Pay Teachers and sell them to other teachers because teachers have nowhere to get resources. But while that sounds great, what we just illustrated was that there's no resources, so they're having to go buy their own. I'm
Wow.
teaching for your school district. Why am I having to go and find worksheets?
Right.
Why do I have to go and create my own graphical illustrations that should be provided for me?
Hmm.
And I just don't understand that. But I there was a study in Australia where the same thing was going on, and they found it was like a 30% bump in teacher happiness when
Increase
they
or
started
decrease?
providing. It was an increase in their
Okay.
happiness when they started providing resources for the teachers.
Oh, yeah.
Because, by the way, when a teacher has to get their own or make their own, that's extra time that they could
And
be doing something
stress.
else.
Yeah, it's stressful.
And, but I would say 90% of the districts in the United States, teachers have to come up with their own stuff.
Wow. That's crazy.
And
Talk about added pressure.
yes, and you're giving them more work. I also
Wait.
think this is a long-term solution and this will never happen, but it is my dream that it will happen. So, um, if you had a accountability rules at districts, in other words, um, so in a CEO and a corporation, if if the profits are falling every year, he's gone. But in a district, all the people at the top, as long if education continues to get worse and worse and worse, they're not gone. They just get raises. There's no accountability. In my opinion, there should be some rules put into place that says if you have failing, if the scores continue to go down for 3 straight years in a row, you have to go. Someone else has to come in and be voted into that position. Why are we letting people who continually fail upward?
Why are we?
I don't know. That's a
Yeah.
good question. Well, here's the reason, and I said it would never happen. It's because the people who would have to vote on this are the actual people who would get fired. And so
Right.
it's
Yeah.
kind of like Congress. They're never going to vote themselves out.
Yeah.
So, um, but that would be. if you could enact that at a state level or a federal level, more a state level, I think that would go a long way. You would have, if someone knew that their priority was keeping their job, and the way to keep their job was to get test scores higher or to get the grading higher,
Mhm.
they would be more apt to do things that were beneficial to those scores and grades than to do things that are just beneficial to saving money or to the salaries of people who work in the district offices.
Yeah,
But like I said,
it
I just
really,
don't see that. One of
well,
the other things that I was blown away by, I had no idea until I got into education resources. There are a lot of states where unions have the contracts, the labor contracts.
mhm.
Teachers in K through 12 have tenure. I thought that was only in college.
They have what,
It
sorry?
used to
Tenure?
only be 3 years to get tenure in New York
Oh, yeah,
City,
yeah.
which means you
Okay.
can't be fired after that,
Okay.
no matter what you do. And
Wow.
so I illustrate in the book all some stories about people who got tenure, then got in trouble for misconduct, sexual misconduct with students. And instead of getting fired, they just get sent to a place where they come to work every day, waiting for their hearing, which might take 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, and then they keep appealing. And so they do no work, but they keep getting their pay and their pay raises and their pension and all the benefits of healthcare. And they can't be fired because you've just given them a free pass. By
Right.
the way, I think tenure is crazy for anything. You're essentially saying that you can't be, we, uh, most of the time, we've all seen, if you've been around in a job long enough, you've seen people who are there a long, long time who've just sort of phoning it in at some point because they're just waiting till they get to the end of the line.
Pretty much.
Well, they're not doing a good job and they're not worried in these states about losing that job because they can't be fired.
Wow. That's
And
crazy.
so what happens is I was told some funny stories by people in some of the northeastern states where some of the older people get taken out of those classes and moved to um, doing menial jobs like making copies or they're the tech support person, even though they don't necessarily know anything about computers, but they will call in the tech support people. They just give them those jobs because they're sort of at the end and they're not really doing a good job, but
Wow.
they're still getting paid.
Jeez.
Um, One of my other ones, and this is the one I was talking about, that is this is hopefully happening right now under Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Dr. Marty McCary at the FDA. I talk about in the book that we send kids to health class and tell them how to eat healthy. Then they leave that class and they go to the lunchroom and it's not healthy. It's
Mm-hmm.
completely opposite of what they were just taught. And it gets worse than that too. So I found a lot of research, and I mean a lot, that particularly young students who are eating high carb, high sugar diets, their insulin level spikes. And when your insulin level is spiking, your ability to save or memorize things drops accordingly. And then after that spike drops, what happens is you get tired. Um, and so the food that is being served in a lot of most schools is counterproductive to education. It just
Mm-hmm.
is. And I don't know what the solution is other than they're about to start mandating that schools do higher protein, less carb, less sugar. But I'll tell you, it's even worse. Some schools, they they make extra money on the snacks.
Right.
And even though it's not good for the students, they want the extra money. So the
Right.
student can go through the line, they could just dump their actual lunch in the garbage and eat the chips and the ice cream and the cookies and the
Mhm.
muffins. There's no rule and there's no limitation on it. And
Well, I
so,
want to tell you a story quick, which is crazy. So
sure.
I was at a high school and I was doing a project and I went to the canteen to buy a coffee. Okay. They were selling a coffee with 200 milligrams of caffeine in it. And that is a lot of caffeine. That's a lot of
Yeah,
caffeine for an
that's a
adult, never
monster.
mind so I'm drinking this can and my heart started palpitating and I was like, what? Wait a minute, what is this? So I read the can and it said 200 milligrams of caffeine in this little tiny Red Bull like can. And I was
Hmm.
like completely blown away. I was like, how
Yeah.
you're going to kill somebody? That's a lot of caffeine. Never mind for
Well,
a student or a kid. What if a child got a hold of that?
sadly, if you're going to Starbucks or a lot of those places, you're getting that much
I
caffeine
know,
anyway.
but
My
in a
wife will tell
school,
you that parents will bring Starbucks to their kids in class.
yeah. But they're selling that. I don't know. I couldn't handle it. I just felt bad for the little kids. I was like, I hope you never get a hold of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that, like I said, they making the choices based on extra income, not necessarily
Right.
what's best.
Yeah.
And once again, that comes back to my point that I think they keep losing sight of the priorities. The priorities is
Mm,
to educate. We shouldn't be trying to, we're not trying to start a small business uh, of snacks off of our children.
right.
They're there to learn. We should be giving them stuff that is, feeding into that learning. And even most schools give free breakfast, but it's nothing but sugary cereals
Right.
and muffins and things that cause them to crash a half hour or 45 minutes after they get out
Hmm.
of or get into the classroom.
Hmm.
And so all that stuff, all of those changes I talked about, except for the one with the district, would be so easy to implement and would make, I think within a year, you would see great changes in education.
Well, amazing, amazing. Thanks for sharing all those. What a great episode. All these solutions and ideas to help the school system. Um, why don't you tell us a little bit about your services and where we can find you?
Well, I don't really do any services now along this lines. This book was kind of the end of all that, but a lot of
Mhm.
people will go to BryanThomasWetzel.com. It's BryanThomasWetzel.com. And they will send me questions of, my child's having problems with this or that. And all I will do is typically refer them to somebody I know who is a former teacher, or if I know something, I will give them the resources I can find. Um, I'm not, I can't necessarily call your district and help.
Right.
Sometimes I think people want that, but I don't
Hmm.
have
They
that.
need an
I don't have that
advocate.
power. Yeah, but I can tell them. A lot of people don't always know the rules, um, or how much you can push back.
Hmm.
And so I will give them my best advice. And if what I get mostly lately is teachers sharing their stories with me
Mm.
because they can't tell them. And I think they think I'm going to write another book. Maybe one day I will just write a book and say, these are all the stories that were sent to me,
Right.
all in one place. And these are going to blow your mind because they're worse than some
Wow.
of the ones I put in the book. Um, a lot of them are
So
behavioral
people,
stories.
oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Go
people
ahead.
can go to your website. People can go to your website and they can find you there and they can ask you
Hmm.
questions and you'll respond to them and give them resources. Your book is going to be
Yeah.
located there as well for them to purchase.
It is, but they can find it on all the majors, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Apple. Um, for also, if you go to at Scoobs Ed, SKUBESED on Twitter, we have the entire library posted up there of educational videos that people can find, and it'll also link them back to the YouTube page where the
Mm.
entire 1700 video library is. located.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
And you can look up
Brian,
anything math there. And if you're having trouble teaching your child, these videos where you have been viewed thousands of times by people trying to help their kids with homework.
oh, beautiful. That's an amazing resource. Um, it has been a pleasure. It's been so good talking to you again. I can't believe this hour has gone by so quickly.
Yes, it has. But that's because
Yeah.
I ramble. He didn't stop me.
And so that's no, that's not true. You're giving everybody some really valuable information.
Well, thank you.
So
Thank
why
you.
don't you leave our listeners with one last Brian Wetzel remark before we go?
I leave it with the same remark every time because I can't repeat this often enough, but stay involved in your children's education. Okay. Don't sit back and just hope everything's going well. Keep an eye on what's going on. Talk to your kids. You don't want to find out at the end of the year that they're struggling in something that you could have found out at the beginning of the year. If they're getting bullied, you don't want to find out after it's too late and there's a lot of damage. And keep, have conversations with your kids. I'm a big believer, and I've read other psychologists who are believers in this too. Have dinner with your kids, talk to them, make them put the cell phones on the counter
Mm.
and have a conversation with them and try and find out what's going on in their life. I'm always astounded how many people I will read about their children committing suicide or something happening to them and they say, "Well, we just didn't know." And I was like, "Well, I find that difficult." I'm not saying that I was a perfect parent and I'm not saying they were negligent, but I feel like you got to be involved to find out what's really going on. Don't wait till it's too late.
Don't wait till it's too late. I love that. And you're right. We got to be involved with our children and what they're doing and advocate for them.
Mhm.
So you're a really good advocate for us.
Well,
So
thank you.
thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So thanks for being here. And we really look forward to having you back again soon. Congrats on the new book. I'm so excited to hear
Thank
more
you.
about that too. And to our
Yep.
audience, thank you so much for tuning in. You guys are amazing. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and follow, and leave any comments you'd like in the notes because we'll make sure that Brian gets them there too. Until next time, I'm Lisa Urbanski with The Advisor. Bye for now.